Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest is Chris Archer. He has lived a story that sounds like the ultimate success on paper, but he's here to tell us about the hidden reality behind it. He left school at 16 with no real plan and grafted his way from being a window fitter to building a multi seven figure business. But while the business grew to 3.5 million pounds in turnover, Chris was quietly burning out behind the scenes, trying to be the perfect husband, dad, and boss, while unable to switch off. He describes living a completely different reality than what people saw on the outside. Today, he helps other business owners who are stuck in that same trap of success without freedom, teaching them how to build systems that actually give them their lives back. So, Chris, it's a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Absolute pleasure to be here. It's good to talk to you.
All right. So let's dive in. You you have this incredible journey from leaving school at 16 to building a 3.5 million pounds business. So you are also very honest, very open about the fact that while it looked like you were living the dream, you were quietly burning out. So can you take us back to that specific moment where you realized that the success on paper didn't feel like success in real life?
Yes, and I think actually my story is probably similar to quite a few others, whether they know it or not. When you own a business and the entire organization kind of runs through you and your own ability to provide information and to do the work and to provide answers, the the business doesn't care when you get tired. The business doesn't care when you feel like you want to go and rest or when you have an illness for a few days. It really doesn't care about any of that kind of stuff. And when you continue to grow, which is organic for a business, so once you're up and running and, one customer turns into five and five turns into 10, when you're continuing to run on what I now define as owner power, you can only sustain that for so long, and you can only add so much pressure onto yourself when the business is set up in that way. And that was a trap that I fell into. And it was think things are okay. They go around in cycles, as I've kind of identified now. And you make a couple of changes when you can, and that works fine. But one thing that you never really look at is how much work can I physically do to keep the business in good health before it starts to, make some cracks show. And that was an interesting point, because it's not uncommon for those that are in business and entrepreneurship to be doing 40, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks in cases. But when you're doing that for a sustained period of time, and it's easy to fall into a trap of wondering, what am I actually getting for this? Am I maintaining my peak performance here? Am I at the best of my energy? Am I giving the business what it needs here? And if you're not careful, the cracks and the fatigue start to show without you noticing. And that for me was a bit of a turning point, really, because we'd got quite a lot of staff. We were doing quite a good amount of business. We were making quite a decent amount of money, but the quality of life didn't really match what was visible from that outside view. And the minute you say to anybody, "Oh yeah, we're selling millions of pounds a year in products here," everybody assumes that it's fantastic. oh, I really want what you have, and how do I do that? And it all looks great, and people, my friends even and family, they'd say, "Oh, it's okay for Chris. It's fine for him. He's got it all figured out." But then when you see that you've got 60 to 70-hour work weeks and you're actually spending no time being a human, no, I'm sure they wouldn't want that. I'm sure that's not what they want. They want the version of it that they see, which is the bank statements and the cars and things like that. But they certainly wouldn't want the level of work that it takes to sustain that.
All right. So, I'd like to know, Chris, what were the hidden costs of being the one who does everything? So, was there a specific mistake or failure that happened because you were trying to hold it all by yourself?
Yes, and there's two parts to that question. One is specifically related to business, and the other is actually a personal impact of what you've just described there, what you've asked. The business impact is that when you're the person that knows all of the things as I described them, when you're the person that has all of the knowledge about what your company is doing, you become a filter point. Everybody wants to speak to you. Everybody wants to see you. Everybody wants just Chris to be doing that thing. There's an element of mistrust when you say, "Oh, well, somebody else can take care of that." Um, everybody wants a piece of you. So one of the mistakes that I made was not empowering my staff and my team earlier on enough to make sure that they had the level of ownership over what I was paying them to do, essentially. So that was a mistake, and that then translates into when everybody wants that piece of you, it just picks at your ability even quicker, and then you realize that you've created this trap for yourself. Now you've got all of the questions to answer because I designed it by that way, not on purpose, but that's certainly a big learning point for me. And the follow on for that is that also when you do that for yourself, when you create that situation, that problem for yourself, I certainly forgot to a certain degree that I had a wife and two young children at home that were also craving my attention. And it's easy to be we would describe it as a rabbit in the headlights. I've got to do this. I've got to do that for work. I've got to make this client happy. I've got to achieve that this week. When actually all you really want to do is go and sit around the dinner table with your wife and kids and watch some cartoons and that kind of thing. So that was a personal realization that, and that actually, I think if you look across the globe, the reason that people would give you that they want to start a company is to provide themselves with the freedom of choice to live and spend their time and money how they wish, right? Would that be a fair assessment? So the realization there is if you don't design it that way, you get the opposite.
All right, all right. Really fantastic response, Chris. So you went from earning 40,000 pounds to making a 3.5 million pound sale. So, what was the biggest mindset failure or limiting belief that you had to overcome to handle that level of scale?
Think again, that's the mindset shifts, the thinking shifts, and the belief systems that you have, they become cyclical as well. So that's a repetition that happens a number of times. I like to use the phrase at the moment that what gets you to a certain point isn't the same thing that's going to get you to the next level. What skill set you have now, the tool set you have now, the mindset that you have now, and the belief system that you have now, it needs to be a completely different set of those things to get you from now to the next level. And then when you get to the next level, it needs to change again. You have to think differently. You have to think bigger. You have to maybe get comfortable being uncomfortable to achieve that next set of goals. I think to directly answer your question, I probably suffered with what I think is possibly the most common limiting belief, which is when you question whether you are worth the next thing, whether you deserve it. And that presents itself as a little bit of imposter syndrome, I think. You ask yourself, why should I be the one that does this? Why should I have the big business? Why should I have the success? So probably the biggest thing was training myself and helping myself, or letting myself understand that actually I deserve that as much as anybody else.
All right. So, Chris, you now help business owners implement systems and structures. So, how did your own lack of systems in the early days, you know, in the early days lead to setbacks? And what was the first system you built that actually gave you some freedom back for yourself and, of course, your family?
So the problem with small businesses I've identified, and again, this comes back to the owner power thing. So every customer communication, every supplier communication, everything to do with the business, whether it's to do with your sales or your marketing or your money, it all to a certain degree lives in your head as the owner. And now that isn't a system. That's a limited storage facility. When I talk about building systems now, it's about getting a systemized way of doing business, of running the company out of your head and documented so that it can be followed by other people, so that it can be trained on, so that it can be managed and improved. And one of the very first things that we did, and admittedly, I didn't do this until a good maybe 2.5 to 3 years into my business journey, is actually drew out a simple train track. And the way I was presenting this to the team is, we've got this train track and the train carriage is going to be moving along it. And each opportunity where it stops is going to be a station, just so that we had that kind of understanding. And it was to map out the customer journey. So we assumed the customer was on the train. They stopped at the first station. What did they see? What did they get? What did they need? And that really helped us break down what the sales process was going to look like. The mistake that I was making is I assumed that every customer that came into the business knew exactly what I knew, and they don't. So they had to stop at all of these little stations of education. They had to stop at all these stations of the next process to move them towards that end point. So that was the first thing that we did, and it really prompts you to think. I think I know all of this stuff, but what do I actually know? And how can I get other people to know this? And it was a really simple exercise, but actually, for those that haven't done it, I would highly recommend it. When you can give people that visual representation of what happens next, what the next station is, when it's their responsibility to deal with the customer, they can say, oh, this customer's currently at station 3. My job is to get them to station 4. And that just helps map out the journey for everybody for everybody else to understand, and then they can take ownership of it. That then frees you up as the owner to focus on other and new things.
All right. So, Chris, for the business owner listening right now who feels like their business is running them into the ground and they are successful on the outside but drowning on the inside. So, what is the first most practical step you would advise them to take today to start getting their life back?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think the first step really depends on the individual situation. So what I'm going to say is that the first step is to figure out what your first step needs to be, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. So I would spend a little bit of time, I would do an exercise where I figured out and wrote down what my personal strengths and weaknesses are. I would do the same for the business. I would write down what's going well, what's not going well, And then I would try and form some sort of alignment between what I do well and what the business is doing well, and try and capitalize on those things, because you want to focus on what's going well, not just what's going bad. And I would look at where my own personal weaknesses are and where the business wasn't doing so well, and categorize those into urgent, not so urgent, it can wait. And I would bring in some help and support, or I would upskill myself so that I could do the urgent things that the business isn't doing so well first.
All right, that sounds like a really actionable framework. Thanks for sharing, Chris. So, for you, what does being successful truly mean to you now, Chris?
Being successful to me simply means being able to choose how I spend my time, who I spend it with, and to pursue the opportunities that I want to pursue. And I would also urge anybody that's listening to this to really define what their own unique version of success is, because contrary to what we all see on social media now, not everybody wants the same thing. If you want a Ferrari and a yacht, go chase a Ferrari and a yacht. That's your version of success. But make sure you're not chasing the Ferrari and the yacht because that's what you see and that's what you measure as successful. Because actually, it might be that that kind of stuff doesn't make you happy. For me now, success is being happy and doing those things that I just mentioned, spending time with who I want to spend it with, and exploring the opportunities that I like exploring. It's not, I'm not a materialistic person, so I don't need the Ferrari and the yacht that I've just described.
All right, all right. Really interesting one there. So, can you quickly tell us about the Growth Club and what it's about?
Absolutely, yeah. So Growth Club it's an online private community that I set up, and the reason I set it up is because it's something that I really wish I'd had access to about 5 years ago. Growth Club, simply put, is an opportunity for other business owners and entrepreneurs to join me on a regular basis and essentially get their questions answered, because business and entrepreneurship is lonely. It's often challenging, and sometimes when you feel like you've got nobody to turn to ask a question, to get support with something, it can be quite challenging. So I set Growth Club up for people that are moving towards that next level and just need a little bit of support in getting there. So as a member, you get access to regular Q&A calls with me and the other members. I also post regularly in the feed about things that I'm thinking about, new changes, new challenges, new ways of thinking, just to keep that information fresh. And I also share the documents, the resources, the workbooks, and the guides that I've used previously to build systems and to make changes in my business. So all of that documentation is accessible to the members. Um, so it's more. It also, sorry, the last thing it provides actually is probably the most important thing, which is a level of accountability. Tool sets are one thing, resources, I can give you all of the information, but unless you actually take action on it, it doesn't mean anything. And by committing to the group on the actions that you're going to take, you're much likely to take those steps to move forward.
All right. So, for our listeners who are feeling, that squeeze and want to check out the Growth Club or learn more about your work, so where is the best place for them to go?
I would suggest heading to my website in the first instance, which is www.smesuccess.co.uk. And if you are interested in looking at Growth Club, then that's the same domain /Growth Club, but you can find it from the homepage anyway.
All right. So, Chris, this has been such a relatable and important conversation, and I am indeed excited to have you on the show today, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.